Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ask an Angel with Jonathan Hung. It's my pleasure to introduce Brooke Harris from Good Mylk. Brooke, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
Great. So let's start off. What is Good Mylk and how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Goodmylk, we were the first to really scale homemade quality plant-based milks. And there's a few layers to what that means, but really, we live by the mission of creating the very best quality plant-based milk and dairy products. And for us, that means whole food ingredients and nothing else. So I don't know if you know this, but you can make homemade milk at home, almond milk, cashew milk, hemp milk, but it's a pretty big pain in the butt. So we take the work out of that for you. We figured out how to scale in a way where we don't have to add weird gums or binders or fillers, and do that through two unique formats, which are frozen and powdered, and create these milks that are exactly as if you had made them at home, but you don't have to do any of the work.
No. Wonderful. And just out of curiosity, I'm sure everyone knows about alternative milks, like not dairy, from cows, but obviously from almond or oat. But I'd love to talk about types of products and what types of milks, alternative milks you work with.
Yeah, so we've positioned ourselves so that we can, as this category of plant-based milks grow, we can kind of play with whatever ingredients we want. But right now, our main milks, we do almond milk, oat milk, and hemp milk. Hemp milk might be a little less familiar to people, but it's literally just hemp seeds, kind of blended up into a really creamy, delicious milk. And we do milks and creamers as well.
Mm-hmm. No, great, wonderful. So, how did you come up with the idea for the company? I mean, what was the story behind it? Because I know you're not a first time founder. I know you've done other things. You've had your own store here in California and Los Angeles. Love to hear the background on that.
Yeah, well, it all feels kind of like the same journey that just led down some different paths, but the short version of the story is basically I was on my own wellness journey, got really sick when I first moved to Los Angeles, and didn't know why because I was plant-based. And so went to all these doctors, went through all these procedures to try and figure out what it was. And at the end of the day, it ended up being the food that I was eating, but it wasn't like I was eating, cookies and chips for dinner. I was eating things that I thought were healthy. And some of the biggest problems were the plant-based milks that I was drinking. And I went home, turned over my carton of almond milk and realized, whoa, there are not really many real food ingredients in here. And in fact, I don't know what most of these ingredients are. When you look at the nutrition panel, you see that there's not a lot of actual nutrients. There's no protein or 1 gram of protein when, as a vegan, you're trained to know nuts have a lot of protein. So that led me to do research and realize there's 2 to 3 almonds per cup of almond milk for these almond milks on the market. And was a really difficult moment because almond milk was a staple in my diet, in my kitchen.
Right.
So went to the internet to see what can I do about this. Couldn't find a brand that was clean ingredient, was whole food. Found out that you could make it yourself. So started doing that, and it was amazing. It tasted amazing. Like, forget the health piece.
Right.
The taste was so amazing that I was never going back. But then also led me to that conclusion of like, whoa, this is a really big pain in the butt. Most people are not going to do this. How can we make a product that they can just kind of have available? And so started small time at the farmer's market with fresh bottles of milk to test the waters, and it grew really quickly. People were interested, and so then we figured out a way to scale it, which are those 2 formats that I mentioned earlier, the frozen and powder.
Mm-hmm. No, great. And so let's talk about being a founder. I mean, obviously, from my point of view as an investor, an angel investor, the team is so incredibly important. How did you build your team, and how have you grown since then with your team?
Yeah. We've been, I've been incredibly lucky to have like really great people building this with me along the way. And you also learn a lot through good hires and through bad hires. And we've certainly had our moments where I've made some poor decisions, but you learn and it makes that next hire so much better. So we have an amazing team, and it's different phases of your business. You need different types of people. And that's a really hard thing to learn and understand as a founder, especially if someone's been with you from day one and then, 2 years down the road, a startup is constantly moving, growing. As the founder, you constantly have to be moving and growing, and not everyone is at that pace. So we've had a few hard moments too, where people have been with us early on and just don't make sense for a certain stage, or even more when you get investors and investors say, okay, now hire a COO or hire a VP of sales.
Right.
And you go out there and realize, man, there's a lot of people qualified, but not a lot of people who have worked at the startup level. And it's a very different type of work environment and, type of work required. So there's been so many lessons in that. And I think the important thing is we figured out how to hire for our stage and figured out that there are some things that, experience is really important, but there are some things that are more important at this stage in our business. And the two or the couple things that I really look for when hiring is curiosity. Like someone has to be very curious and willing to ask questions, a willingness to problem solve and think outside of the box, because literally everything we do within the company, for better or worse, is problem solving. And then someone who has a great work ethic, because we're all wearing so many hats at this stage.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you, because I always tell people it takes one team to go from 0 to 1, right? And 0 to 1 means like 0 to 100,000 in revenue. And then, it takes a totally different team to get to 1 million and then grow from scale. Great. So just out of curiosity, Brooke, what do you think you're doing different than your competitors? I mean, what are they missing versus what you think? Nothing that they're doing anything wrong, but it's just you coming at it a different approach.
Yeah, I think that we're building a plant-based dairy for the modern consumer. Customers are becoming much more aware of how what they put in their body impacts how they feel. They also are having higher expectations from there's so many options out there. They have higher expectations. They want it to taste really good. They want it to work in the ways similar to how dairy works in coffee. They want all these things. And I think that most of our competitors are missing the mark, especially on the number one reason people turn to plant-based dairy is they want to do something healthier. And when you look at what's on the market, most of these plant-based dairy milks are not healthier. You'd be better off having actual dairy. And that comes from a person who, hasn't had dairy milk in 20 years. So I think it's really unfortunate. There's a lot of, there's a big gray area around plant-based in general. And customers are starting to evolve past this understanding of knowing that just because it's plant-based doesn't mean it's healthy. And I don't think brands and companies are adjusting fast enough for this new set of consumer needs and desires and wants and what the consumer really deserves.
That's great insight. And, I always tell people it's different being a consumer or CPG product startup than versus something that's software or, SaaS or anything like that. So, Brooke, I'm just curious, what would you tell a young founder trying to bring their vision to life? Like some of the things that you wish you had heard when you were starting out?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to that question. There's plenty that I wish I would have known. I would say the number one thing that I would say is make sure that, whatever the company is that you're starting or the vision you're bringing to life, make sure you're really passionate about it. There are a lot of highs and lows on this journey. And when you're at your lowest, there's no amount of money or just, the founder clout that is going to fuel you. It has to be because you're so passionate about it and you're meant to bring this thing to consumers. That at least that's what I found on my journey. And I would say too, because we're talking about fundraising, understand before you ever take a check or go out to fundraise, really understand what that means for the future of your business and what the growth expectations are, what investor expectations are, what that means for an exit or the end game, and make sure that's fully aligned with what you want.
No, great advice. And just out of curiosity, are there any books or publications or podcasts that you would urge your team or you as an entrepreneur read or follow that motivates you?
Yeah, well, I'm a big podcaster. We're in CPG, so and beverage. So I listen to the BevNet podcast a lot. I think it's called Taste Radio. A lot of good, inspiring founders on there. I love hearing other founders, especially founders who are way ahead of me and have exited. Love hearing their journey and their story and the lessons they've learned. It's totally invaluable. And I also encourage my team actually to like we're in this constant world of consuming information and trying to grow, but I recommend them listening to podcasts that don't force them to think, where they can kind of just shut their brain off. And so, Jonathan, if you are into murder mystery or white collar crime or anything like that, if you do not know about this podcast, you need to download it ASAP. It's called Swindled.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't. But it's like, it seems like every person I've ever like dated loves like Dateline or Forensic Files. So it's like, it sounds like right up there.
I listen to Dateline as well, their podcast, but this is like the gold star of those podcasts. Wow. It's so legit. And it's one where it's like when it's been a long day and I just need to zone out a bit and like be entertained. It's a good unwinding podcast. And I don't know if that makes me demented because I like to listen to murder stories and white collar crime, but I highly recommend it.
Okay, wonderful. No, I wrote it down. I'm definitely going to look into it. That's great. And just a couple more questions, Brooke. So, obviously 2020 was a challenging year. I'd love to hear how you went through it as, a founder and CEO for Goodmylk, and how it's changed your perspective of how you want to move the company forward.
Yeah, it was massively challenging for us because we, our biggest channel strategy was B2B, which for us is specialty coffee chains. And so, as you know, along with restaurants, those closed down overnight. So our revenue dropped almost to zero overnight in that channel. And we pivoted to where customers were. And luckily, we had done the work in that channel that customers going into coffee shops knew they were getting Goodmylk. And those customers came to our website. And so that gave us the momentum and, the drive to really push into direct to consumer and learn a lot about that channel. We gained a lot of customers. We were able to invest in marketing for the very first time. And now coming out of it, we have, a strong D2C channel, and that B2B channel is growing again. And, coffee shops are opening and starting to do business like they were before, and new shops are opening. And so we're seeing the light at the end of that tunnel. And it's allowed us to have two strong channels and learn more about our customer. When you're in D2C, you learn exactly who your customer is because you're interacting with them every day. And so that was really fun for me as the founder and someone who drives a lot of the marketing. But we always knew omnichannel was important, but didn't know how important it was until one of your channels gets completely cut off.
Right. No, absolutely. And just out of curiosity, what could we look forward to? I'm sure you're doing a bunch of different R&D. Obviously, you still have the frozen product and the creamery. Would you want to do it in a different container or anything else going forward, or what do you think about your product and how it gets delivered?
Yeah, we have some big things up our sleeves as far as format logistics. So sticking with frozen, sticking with powder, but I think powder took a lot for us to unlock and be able to do it in a way that was really aligned with our values. And we're there now in the R&D wise. And so there's a bunch of different ways we want to unlock that further for sales in different channels. Next up is some big partnerships coming up this year and a push for that powder in our B2B channel, which is really exciting. So yes, a lot of fun, exciting stuff on our plates, including launching into new regions. So just this month, we officially launched into San Francisco in the Bay Area. So we'll be expanding even more there and then heading to New York before the end of the year.
Okay, wonderful. I usually like to close out the show. Do you have any questions for me? I'd love to help answer anything, or, you're curious about what I do or how I can be helpful.
Yeah, I am, I'm so curious now that you are on, we've sat in the investor seat for so long, and now that you are on this founder journey, how has that impacted your conversations as an investor?
You know what? It's not just let me just talk about your revenue and talk about your team and all these check marks I have to do. It's really just understanding if you have that drive and passion. Like you said, I always tell people, if I'm doing that, that means I'm in a growth investor, right? I'm probably helping you raise your Series B and beyond. And that's not who I am. Being a founder actually got me back to my roots and saying okay, I get it. It's really about getting to go from $1 million in sales to 4 million. I don't want to be blunt about it, but I was yeah, it's easier. But going from zero to a million is so much harder, or to 100,000. Like most startups can't even get sales. Like 90%
Yeah.
don't even get to
Yeah.
actual like revenue generating businesses. They might be stuck in their MVP stage forever. And like I've heard great things about other founders, like something called like the penny gap, which is like the idea of like, okay, well you're giving away your product, or you're giving away people like pilots, but then the moment you start charging, how sticky will it actually be? It's just so interesting to see, and what needs to be done to pivot, and worrying about cash flow, because you are responsible for your team. Absolutely. And you have to be cognizant of what's going on with how you're raising, the timing. It's like always be raising. Unfortunately, I mean, I had someone else on my podcast here, and he exited. And the number one thing he said to me was like, I was like, what are you looking forward to now that you're exited? And he said, the number one thing I care about now is like, I never have to raise money again. He got bought by a Fortune 500 company, and all he has to do is go to get budget money, right, for it, and just focus on the product.
That sounds yeah. That's yeah, there's a lot in this founder journey that you don't realize until you're on it. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time is spent fundraising. It's very fun for me to run the business and be in the business, but
Mm-hmm.
that's you know some months it's 20% of my time. Right now it's 50% of my time, and the rest is fundraising or thinking about the next fundraise. But yeah, it definitely takes a certain personality, and back to like you have to really like be in love with what you're doing,
Yep.
and in love with the mission, and feel like this is something that only you can bring to the world. I think at least that's what I need to fuel me.
Absolutely. And also from my point of view, it's like you just have to have the right team. You have the right people with you. Like I'm more pessimistic, which is annoying at times. Like I actually feel like I am more optimistic. But when coming to running a business, I just think the worst. And I'm glad I have a partner who's the CEO of the company, that he's a little bit more optimistic. And then we kind of balance each other out, and then we can get things done together.
Yeah, it is all about balance too. We have that internally. Myself, who is very very much optimistic, and just like will push forward however I have to. And then our VP of finance, who you would want to be incredibly practical,
Mm-hmm.
detail oriented, thoughtful, and it's such a nice balance. Is that you need both to have a successful business.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, Brooke, where can we find Good Mylk? Let everyone know
Yes.
and also what's your favorite product?
Oh, yes. So I am an almond girl. Any of our almond milk products, but our activated creamers. So those are one of our newer products. They're powder and they're creamers, but then they have these longevity herbs in them. So we formulated them to be really good for the skin, really good for mental cognition, help get rid of brain fog. And I use that every single morning in my matcha, and I swear by it. And I've had, friends that stay with me for a few days, and I get everyone on it, and everyone swears that they see a difference in their skin. So almond activated creamer. You can buy it on our website at goodmylk.co. And we're most active and have a lot of fun information to share on our Instagram. And that's just at Goodmylk Co.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brooke.